Welcome to the 4th annual Spring Engler Celebration. Tonight is a time for us to look back on all that we've accomplished together over the past year. We also get to hear from Verne Holoubek, founder of Holoubek Studios, a farmer, and president of the Terry and Verne Holoubek Family Foundation. We'll then conclude the evening with a dessert reception. This evening is an opportunity for us to bring everyone involved in the Engler experience together in one venue. We are honored to have a gathering of our community tonight that includes incoming freshman scholarship winners, current students, parents, faculty, advisory board members, UNL administration, Engler alumni, mentors, and future Engler entrepreneurs. In the interest of time, we will only make one formal introduction. Our friend and our founder, Mr. Paul Engler. Paul, can you stand please and be recognized?
And although tonight is a reflection of the Engler program and over the past year of our events and success, we still have yet another major event to come in May. We would like to take this time to show our appreciation for Carlos Estrada. Carlos, would you please rise wherever you may be? Carlos has been an essential component of planning this year's Engler Industry Tour, where a group of our students and staff will be traveling to the tech entrepreneurship hub of the world, Silicon Valley, California. This trip is unprecedented in the Engler program and a huge step in bringing value and connections to our entrepreneurs. Without Carlos, our program would not have been able to create such an opportunity for our members and entrepreneurs. Earlier this evening, we honored graduating seniors who are involved in the Engler experience and have completed the minor. Would those seniors please stand to be recognized one more time? And lastly, just on a personal note, I guess throughout the past year in the Engler program, I've met some outstanding individuals, and I just wanted to give a quick round of applause to the other 6 members of my executive team and everything they've done for this program this year. And I think it's just been an outstanding program to be involved with, and those 6 members have honestly changed my life. So let's give them a round of applause. And now we have a short video that shares some of the stories of how the Engler program has influenced the seniors.
The Engler program has been the single most valuable experience in my time at the university.
Honestly, can't even put a value on it.
I knew this was a place for me.
100% the most important thing I've done in college.
I don't want a real job. I want to do flowers and run my own company.
You know, we've got everything from a rapper to a tractor mat guy, a sleazy truck salesman, and down to a ton of production agriculture folks as well.
Just the entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, it's alive and well here at Engler.
My Engler entrepreneurship experience included starting a video and photo production company.
My business is Triple E Equine LLC, and we have a horse motel.
When I joined the Engler program, I had been building a hydroponic tomato business throughout high school. Since that time, I've explored a few other entrepreneurial ventures, real estate, both in the rental property market, as well as flipping a couple properties here in Lincoln.
I am starting my own business with expanding my own cow herd at our family's operation.
I started Kingpin Enterprises my freshman year of college.
Coming into Engler, I had already started Bella Baby Nuts, another recent one, social media management and consulting.
I've gone through a few different projects over the last 4 years, everything from manufacturing to technology and livestock production.
The company I own is mostly wedding floral.
I took my FFA, SAE, or Supervised Agricultural Experience project of meat goats, and then brought that into Engler's.
I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, so when I heard the Engler program, it's something different. They actually do things, they start things. it really caught my attention, and I knew that was something that I'd be interested in.
When I came to college, I really didn't know that I was an entrepreneur.
I knew that I had this desire to build something and to do something probably entrepreneurial.
It really caught my eye because it's just something different. It's not like every other organization on campus.
And I was like, whoa, I need to do this. Like, this is something that I could take my little hobby into something that could actually make me money and support me.
It sounded like something that was right up my alley, entrepreneurship, building business.
Decided to jump in with both feet and see where I could have an impact.
And once I met Dr. Field, it was game over.
I knew that the second I started, I was going to be going full-fledged. So I really joined for that reason, just to get started and take off and quit coming up with excuses of why I was waiting.
The Engler program teaches students how to pull the trigger, launch, and invest in themselves. And that's something that no other program focuses on.
To solve problems in this day and age, you have to be multidisciplinary. And to do that and do that effectively, you have to have an entrepreneurial mindset to pull all of these disparate things together in a unique way to solve problems.
The difference between Engler and other departments, other places here in Lincoln or around the States, I think as a department, as a university piece is that we're actually starting businesses, that we're getting those boots on the ground, that we're bootstrapping, we're going, and we're making things happen.
This program thinks outside the confines or the box that is part of the normal university experience.
There's no other college program or organization I've seen that you physically start something and you're surrounded by students who are constantly pushing you to be better, and they're doing things themselves, and so you can surround yourselves as part of this community of people that are building something.
We talk about the things that no one else does, and we focus on the areas that no one else is not necessarily willing to talk about, but they don't want to dig deep down in your heart and talk about passion and grit and drive and what really motivates you to get up out of bed in the morning. No one else talks about that stuff.
You don't just have club meetings, like you have rallies that are amping you up to reach your full potential.
There's a call to action with this group. You're building something real.
We're doers, not just talkers. So a lot of programs here talk about things forever, or we sit down and we think about how we would do it, and it's all kind of theory and it's later on. And we, I think in the Engler program, acknowledge that time is not a limitless commodity and that the best time to start is now.
My most valuable experience was spending time with the executive team. Going on some of the trips, being exposed to big ideas, and being shown that some of these big ideas people are doing and they're working, and you can be successful doing something that everyone else thinks you're crazy for.
I think it's very valuable that we are taught kind of the ins and outs of a business.
For me, had it not been for Paul Engler's generosity and for Tom Field's mentorship, I would not have had the opportunities that I have had, including running for student body president, including building those other businesses.
I think my aha moment in Engler was attending the Engler board meeting and getting to meet Joe Stone, and that just showed me that this program is really different because your board members are genuinely interested in what you're doing. They're not just there to serve on a board, they're not just there for another line in the resume, and it's the same with the Engler entrepreneurs. We're not just here for a resume builder, we're here to get something done.
I felt like I understood what I was doing. Rather than wondering and kind of questioning everything, I knew what I was doing and knew what I had to do to get it done.
Dr. Field stood up and started to talk, and he made a comment that has still stuck with me, and it's actually a Mark Twain quote, and it's the idea that the two most important days of your life were the day that you were born and the day you found out why.
One of the big things Engler teaches us is about synergy, and that while we all have individual strengths, when you put those people together on a team, the unbelievable happens and you get tremendous success. And there's no doubt this program wouldn't have had its success without the people that make it possible.
I think first and foremost, I'd like to thank Paul for making the experience possible. Obviously without his contribution, I wouldn't have had this set of amazing experiences and opportunities that I have.
He really had a dream, and I think it's a really beautiful dream that he has, that we're here today, a bunch of students who really are different, and I would say Paul, it wouldn't be possible without him.
And he certainly set quite the example for every single person in this program. as far as sort of what one person can do, the potential of one person.
I think at the core of it, Paul and Tom, each in their respective ways, have really made my college experience possible and made it what it is.
Definitely want to thank Tom. He's been a huge inspiration throughout my whole 4 years.
Tom, Michelle, Dave, being a part of the staff and helping students, I think that they do an amazing job, and I'm truly appreciative of the influence they've had on me.
I'm really thankful for Dave too, who was ready to help me get everything on paper and not be afraid to walk into a bank at 20 years old asking for money to take off and get started.
Definitely Dave Lamb. So thanks for coaching me all these years. It's been great to work with you.
Michelle, of course, too. We all love Michelle. And to have figureheads and models like them, that's really key for the growth and long-term sustainability of a program like this.
So right now we're all building businesses together, and in 10, 15, 20 years, when we're either successful with those businesses or others, I think we'll be able to look around the room or across the state and say, I remember when this person launched that business.
During the past year, the Engler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program has worked towards bringing our community and our culture of empowering enterprise builders to the next level. This year marked our second annual 3DS Engler Startup Experience. For this, we partnered with the 3-day startup program to provide a 48-hour life-changing experience. 53 students and a few community members and 27 mentors joined forces for a weekend of ideation, customer feedback, and business development. At the end of the 3 days, 10 businesses pitched their ideas to a panel of experienced entrepreneurs for feedback and advice. Among these startups were urban and rural development, technological advancements in agriculture, livestock monitoring, pasture management, campus communications, vitals monitoring for sleepy drivers, international agriculture, and customizable ice cream sandwiches. A major highlight during the spring semester is also our continued involvement with the Makerspace at Innovation Campus. And for those of you who don't know, the Makerspace is an environment where community members, faculty, and students are able to come together and get creative in robotics, electronics, a woodworking shop, or perhaps like me, make some new hot pads for a kitchen on the sewing machine. This year, we hosted 2 separate events at the Maker Studio, highlighting our culture and focusing on a top pillar of ours, build.
This year, we also hosted our first ever Women in Entrepreneurship Conference. This 2-day experience was all about empowering women entrepreneurs to become catalysts of rural America. Attendees had the opportunity to take life-changing connections, participate in a celebration of women in business, and learn from some of the greatest, brightest, and most kind-hearted minds. These events were just the top of how the Engler program took huge leaps of faith and accomplished much this year. Students of the program are constantly working to provide a better experience for others and working toward their goals as an enterprise builder. Joe, would you please come forward to introduce our guest lecturer?
So now we will begin the lecture portion of tonight's event. Joining us tonight is Verne Holoubek, founder of Holoubek Studios. He began his career as a street artist, earning money for college. As a college senior, he created an iron-on heat transfer system for t-shirts and became an industry legend. His enterprise grew into a full-scale garment production plant in Pewaukee, Wisconsin, where Verne was CEO until the sale of Holoubek Incorporated in 2005. Today, Verne and his wife, Terry, own and operate a farm that is powered almost entirely by solar energy. Verne is president of the Terry and Verne Holoubek Family Foundation, which funds children's health and educational causes. Please join me in welcoming our speaker for the Engler Spring Lecture, Verne Holoubek.
Good evening, everybody. I wish to thank Tom Fields and Michelle Bassford for the invitation to be here tonight. This is a night paying tribute to the graduating class who will go on and do great things. It's an honor to be your speaker tonight for the 4th annual spring celebration. I couldn't help but notice that the invitation said I was to speak after dinner and before the dessert. So for you entrepreneurs, this is a teaching moment in strategic planning. And a special thanks must go to Mr. Paul Engler for making this entrepreneurship possible. It has been a long time since you've seen me here. You may not recognize me in my new suit of clothes and without my whiskers. I've gone into the world and I've learned a great deal. So children, when you leave here, you'll find the world a very upside-down place. I love old movies, and I took these lines from the final scene of the 1933 movie Topaz. The story ends with this professor's return to receive an award from the school where he once taught. Like the film's main character, I too found the world a very upside-down place. And I'm sure when you leave here, the same will be true. A mentor once told me, when I lodged my complaint of the way things are, the response was, "Verne, you can always maintain your idealism, but you have to live in the world." And that's what I've tried to do. This is a story about a company that was created while I was a student here at the University of Nebraska. So let me tell you how it happened. But first, I'd like to start with my immigration story. I'm here because, like many of you, my ancestors were immigrants. Most arrived poor and without much education. Mostly they came for the promise of America. In 1870, my great-grandfather Holoubek homesteaded north of Schuyler. He and his wife both died young, leaving a large family to be raised by the eldest sister. My grandfather was the youngest of those 9 children. My mother's parents and grandparents, the Yidlishka clan, were early homesteaders who arrived much more prepared and into already settled lands. They had large families that filled 2 pages of the phone book. Education was not part of their heritage, so my mother was denied high school because her father expected her to help her 2 older sisters and 6 older brothers work the 2,000 acres they owned in the 1920s. She was a great reader, she was self-educated, and often told me she would have done well in high school because she was the best reader in her 8th grade class. She cried when she had to leave school. These were the immigrants of the day, those who were shunned by the people who came before them. Catholic or Jew, Chinese or Czech, Irish or Italian, the latest to arrive stood at the back of the line, but never gave up their American dream. The perseverance of that generation exists today in the new people arriving on our shores to better their lives. I believe we should be welcoming them for the contributions they will make, just as our ancestors did a mere 150 years ago. Much of my generation was hardwired to that pioneer spirit that was Nebraska. My mother and father were successful farmers who raised 5 children on a half section of land. Everyone received a college education and a car. They gave us financial help when it was needed. But I must remind you that the tuition in my first semester was $132, and the hourly wage was $1 an hour. By today's standards, it was nearly a free education. The entrepreneur spirit came to me from their example. Mom raised chickens and sold eggs. We milked a few cows and sold cream. From the time I could walk, my chore was caring for a flock of 100 roosters that the hatchery gave to good customers at no charge. I fed and watered them, and years later guarded the flock from predators with my new Daisy BB gun. Mom butchered and cleaned the birds, and we sold them to a grocery store in Columbus. She taught me how to add value to a product. My pay was $1 a bird. I learned to invest early when my father taught me to put the $100 in a savings account. He explained the wealth wealth multiplier of compound interest. I never thought of spending it, letting the interest grow. Frugal was the password in our household. My dad was a cornhusker. Besides starting his farm with only a team of horses, he was a natural entrepreneur. With a low-key approach, offering quality at a fair price and great customer service. He was a farm dealer, calling on farmers in his territory selling Archer oil. He added the new hybrid seed corn to the product line. The land conservation movement, born in the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, taught him how to prevent erosion. Waterways were planted to slow down the runoff of precious topsoil. He harvested the brome grass seed from roadsides in his own waterways, cleaned it and sold it to his list of customers who were beginning to understand the importance of stopping erosion. Every year he cleaned part of the oat crop, selling it for next year's seeding. Then he added tires and some short line equipment distributed by the Lindsay brothers. Every load of cattle or hogs we sold at the Omaha stockyards meant a backhaul of tires and equipment. I helped assemble the running gears and bale loaders, watching farmers come and go from his little office in the house. I was concerned when he gave too much credit to his customers, only collecting the past dues at the end of the year. He had a big heart and understood how difficult farming can get when prices are low. He became their bank at planting time and kept his customers loyal. His advice to me was, give the customer a little more than they thought they paid for. I'm not sure they knew they were giving me the keys to a good life, but I remembered those lessons above all else. My first discovery of self was that I had a gift to draw. In school, I doodled on every notebook, designing new typefaces in a freehand style. There wasn't an art class in my high school, and there was no encouragement to follow a creative curriculum. No one thought you could make a living being an artist. My idols were Walt Disney, who gave us Mickey Mouse, Charles Schulz, creator of the Peanuts characters, Charlie Brown, Lucy, and Snoopy. I taught myself to draw those characters. Years later, I would be inspired by the work of artist Andy Warhol, who screen printed his art, making multiple copies, turning the art world upside down. Those were the famous soup cans. As a high school senior, my mother and father recognized my talent and paid for a correspondence course where I learned the basics of drawing using perspective and light. The first money I made from making art was creating a metal sign for my uncle's Angus farm. Probably the only art ever made in an ag high school class was when I used a torch to cut out a silhouette of an Angus bull that I drew on a 1/4-inch thick piece of sheet metal purchased at a scrapyard. Then I painted it black, and in bold letters on both sides it read, Victor Yedlishka, Angus Farm, Lee, Nebraska. I was paid $100 for the sign. Those were $1960, or price of an old car. The first job made me a professional artist, and I was only 16 years old. On the school bus, I draw a portrait of a pretty blonde, got a date. This was beginning to look like a great career path. In my senior year, in the spring before graduation, I was sitting on the fender of my dad's Alice Chalmers tractor as we drove to the corner of our quarter section to fix some fence. He had just purchased my mother's home place, another quarter, and we started talking about what happens after high school. I told him I would stay home after graduation to help pay for the new land. No, he said, I've saved enough money, I think you should go to college. This was the first time anybody talked to me about going on to school. My parents recognized that I may have the ability to earn a college degree. I adopted the idea that life would be 20% talent and 80% work. My strong points were curiosity, observation, and tenacity. To overcome my weaker talents, I would need help from others. I had to complete that college degree my parents provided and then learn everything I would use for the exciting days ahead. It was the 60s, and for my generation, the most creative and progressive time to be alive in America. John F. Kennedy was our president, and he said, we're going to the moon at the end of the decade. The message I heard was, you could do anything if you got an education and worked hard. Coming from a farm, work was no stranger. Both things came true. My high school was absent in this decision. They never discussed my further education as a possibility. It was my cousins, Don and Dorothy Sedlock, our neighbors, who were already in Ag College, who encouraged me, helping me with the applications and gave me a tour of the campus when I visited, stopping for ice cream at the Dairy Building and ending up at the Student Union where Bobby Soxers mingled, drinking coffee and Cokes. I was hooked. One has to ask, how many young people are passed over by circumstance and never allowed to reach their potential? We never know from where or from whom the next big thing will come. Think of Apple Computer and the iPhone. Steve Jobs was adopted and of Syrian descent. He was born in Wisconsin. The first time I left the path was when I made new friends in a neighboring town. In high school rivalry, this was akin to marrying outside your religion. But I didn't let that stop my curiosity of what lies beyond the hill in the next valley. Making my circle bigger, I joined a hot rod club in Schuyler. They were townies of an upper class, but they accepted me as one of the 3 farm kids into the club. My future business partner was a member and an artist. We loved the idea of art and hot rods, and we started drawing these images on blank white shirts with magic markers. The club was a new identity for me. We were the coachmen, complete with printed jackets, patches, declaring us members of the NHRA, National Hot Rod Association. The official plaques were displayed in the rear windows of our dad's sedans that we would drag race on a flat stretch of Highway 91. Like James Dean in the movie Rebel Without a Cause, late night I took the dare. The kids parked their car on both sides of the road, some watching for cops with the lights on, marking the end of the quarter mile, to witness the alpha dogs racing in our dad's rather slow and heavy coaches. Driving the family's 2-ton 55 Packard, I lost the race to a lighter Rocket 88 Oldsmobile. I doubt we reached over 50 miles an hour. None of us had a real hot rod, but we dreamed of building one. In the last year of my high school, I decided to build that car using a 1935 Ford Coupe that I found in a backyard in Lee, and a more powerful, later model flathead V8 Mercury engine that was laying in the trees behind my cousin's barn. My best friend Rich and I started the project in my dad's machine shed. For most of the senior year, he let me work on the car in a spot he probably needed to store his machinery. Mom and Dad supported me in whatever I wanted to do. The 5 of us children were raised free range, with very few rules. They taught us by example and seldom preached. How did they know what not to do? By the fall, the little Ford Coupe was finished and ready to drive. On a hot day in August, I left home to attend studies in agriculture at the University of Nebraska. Shortly after I pulled on the main highway in sight of our famous Capitol building, I saw the red lights blinking in my rearview mirror. Pulled over by the State Highway Patrol, I rolled down the little window to greet the officer. Without asking for a license, for he thought I had none, in a deep patrolman's voice he said, "Where do you think you're going, little boy?" I've asked that question many times because I did not have a map to my life. Half of the 31 students from the 1961 high school class went on to college. I was an average student, but I was accepted to the university, so I was just good enough. In the middle of the freshman year, the high school principal and superintendent made a visit to Lincoln to see how their former students were doing. Later, I was told my principal and superintendent had a $5 bet that I wouldn't last the year. I pulled passing grades in all my courses, so someone lost $5. My best teacher in high school was Mr. Borglum, who taught algebra and geometry. They became my favorite subjects. Solving problems with mathematical solutions would be easier if I learned these skills. Later that year, I found Mr. Borglum in a university research lab, sorting out proteins, discovering the secrets of the double helix, DNA. I was fascinated by his work, and I was proud to have been a student. This combination of art, math, science, and business would become the foundation of my career. The first year of college was a time to discover the finer points of life. We were all farm kids, and as smart as we thought we were pretty rough around the edges. So the fraternity elders decided to give the pledges some new information and social education. They contracted the Betty Bond Charm School to teach us some etiquette. When the attractive and well-dressed woman entered the room, we all stood up. She proceeded to teach us table manners, like how to use a napkin, how to take soup, always filling the spoon with the forward motion. Never bring the spoon toward you, never slurp, she said. She advised us on proper dress and showed us how to make a tie look perfect. I remember the last lesson when she said, "Change your underwear every day." A custom I've practiced ever since. In the spring of the freshman year, a few guys and one girl met at the Virginia apartments to discuss a new venture. It was a historic location because it was legend that the famous aviator Charles Lindbergh once lived there after quitting college, then coming to Lincoln, learning to fly at the Nebraska Aircraft Corporation's flying school. He paid his way barnstorming across Nebraska, promoting this new method of travel. A few years later, he would become the first man to solo across the Atlantic, landing in a French farm field. I love these explorers and inventors, and I wanted to be like them. It was in that apartment where the plan was hatched and a new company formed. At the end of the meeting, my friend Carl and I became partners in the new venture, and it was called Holoubek Studios. We began its trip into a new field, airbrush art on textiles. We formed two teams. We would travel the state fair circuits, car shows, drag strips, and rodeos, and beaches, working as street artists, painting custom designs on blank white shirts. Remember, there is no competition when you do something new. That first summer brought home enough income to pay for part of the next year of college. But I started to doubt my direction. Once back at school after finishing the summer tour, painting shirts at the Nebraska State Fair, I decided to get off the path again. The counselors were puzzled when I told them I wanted to change majors to art. The tests they gave me said I was more like a farmer than an artist. Surprise, surprise, I said to myself, you grew up on a farm and there wasn't an artist in sight. Not agreeing with them, I insisted. I continued the required ag courses, but enrolled that semester in art school, taking courses in drawing. The semester passed. Fine art wasn't in my blood. The teachers were aghast that I would want to do art for money. How lowbrow, they must have thought. But I trudged on and decided that art school would never make me a Disney or a Schultz. So I went back to the counselors, and they came up with an idea, and they said journalism school. But I said that means I would have to start over. Nearly half my credits to an ag degree were already earned. And journalism required courses in the humanities. I'm not sure who it was, but I have to thank them for listening to my personal educational needs. The university created a new degree, and they called it ag journalism. I would go to J school to finish my studies there, but continue to add credits to my ag degree. It was an experiment. I cannot tell you how important this move was, for it changed my life and allowed me to explore and realize my dreams. I studied news writing under the giants, Neale Copple and Dr. Hall, the men who created the College of Journalism. We learned about those sacred walls between news, editorial, and advertising departments. We understood the difference between truthful information and propaganda. You could not be a credible journalist and work on both sides of that wall. I was selling art and ideas, not writing about them, so I chose the advertising sequence. I began my studies under the infamous Mr. Book. Leaving behind his New York position with the big ad agency BBDO, he came here to teach country kids how to create advertising. It's true I was in Mad Men's school, and if you watch the series, it was spot on. Mr. Book was straight out of Central Casting. He wore impeccable suits, had thin, dark-rimmed glasses, and a mustache. He smoked a small pipe. We were allowed to smoke and drink coffee in class, just like the real newsrooms and advertising shops you see in old movies. He set up the classroom with an ad agency attitude. Mr. Book was tough and unforgiving. Once crushing up an ad layout that took me hours to complete, and then without a word, he threw it in the wastebasket by his desk. In a cold, unencouraging voice, he said, "Come back when you have something good." I was crushed like that layout in his basket, but I recovered quickly. He hated clutter and preached the use of white space. I finally won his approval with the Valentine's Day jewelry store ad. On the solid background, I drew a long stem rose, laying it diagonally across the page so that the eye would follow down and to the right to read the copy. In a fine script typeface, it simply read, "A rose is a rose." At the bottom in simple type was the name of the store. I grew to dislike his methods, but this many years on, I know he had prepared me for the real world, where I met many tough customers who would not accept second-rate work. He made me better than I would have been without his influence. About that time, TV became part of the J School. It was a turning point for the art of advertising in the advent of the famous Kennedy-Nixon debate, where during the campaign, JFK's poise and eloquence of speech was contrasted to a nervous Nixon whose brow sweated under the unfamiliar, harsh camera lighting of black and white television. Like the gentlemen they were, they showed unity of purpose and shook hands, smiling for the cameras. Political campaigns were changed forever by television. So it was under Mr. Book we studied TV production. Teamed with a classmate, we wrote and produced a 30-second commercial for a young men's store near campus. The shop's theme was nautical, so I painted a ship's porthole on a piece of artboard cutting out the window. While the voiceover read the script, the camera zoomed to the porthole and focused on a treasure chest full of costume jewelry and the store's latest collection of campus fashion. It was a dream come true for a guy who was told he was more like a farmer than an artist. And with this TV commercial, I finally earned that A. There were many great teachers in my days here. I'd like to say a word about two of them, professors who influenced me most. I studied economics under Clayton Yeiter, who earned his doctorate in the subject. It was said that he was the only student ever to receive a straight A grade throughout his college career. We had interesting class discussions, and I learned a great deal. Years later, he became our Secretary of Agriculture during those difficult days of Big Ag's move into the modern world. 10 years later, I would meet him again when he spoke in Milwaukee at a meeting of the WTO, the World Trade Organization. He was America's chief trade negotiator and believed in free trade reducing tariffs. His work helped to open the world markets for Nebraska's farmers. I was getting ready to set up a shop in London, England, so his words were inspiring. How lucky I was to be taught by him. I started reading The Economist. I studied further economics under the famous Campbell R. McConnell, who authored the best-selling book in the world on the subject. I learned the basics that would help me understand the economy, valuable information I would use in my personal and business career. A notable quote I heard him say was, "Savings, remember, is the prerequisite of investment." Taking his advice, my wife Terry and I never incurred credit card debt, always saving before buying that new sofa. So you don't need to go to the Ivy League schools to find great teachers. We have them right here at the University of Nebraska. But you have to look for them and seek them out. Go to the website, Grade Your Professor. Find the ones who score high, even if they aren't in your curriculum or in your college. Get off the path and take advantage of what they have to say. I've told this story many times, and it's a pleasure to repeat it for you tonight. It was 1964 when I met one of the very first alumni masters, a new program that brought one alum from each college to spend a few days on campus talking and inspiring students. His name was Merle Jones, then president of CBS, and later a charter member of the NBA Hall of Fame. I don't remember much of what he said, but he made a permanent mark on my life. After he finished his talk, I walked up to shake his hand and introduced myself. I told him I was planning on being in the city that summer. He replied, "Stop in my office when you get to New York," and then he gave me his card. The following summer, I put a crew together for a tour of the East Coast, airbrushing shirts on the beaches of Cape Cod and on the streets of Hyannisport, where the streets were filled with college kids. Bob Dylan was there, waiting to go to the Newport Jazz Festival, where he would change music forever. We worked a fair in Boston and 2 drag races in Maine and New Jersey, where the first drag racer broke the 200-mile-per-hour record. I sat on the edge of the track, drawing dragsters in action. From there, we drove into the city to see my cousin, Bernice. She was there on a summer job doing the same thing I was, looking for experience and adventure. After showing Mr. Jones' card to security, the guard at the CBS building took us directly to the top floor, where the elevator opened into his personal office reception. His secretary said he was very busy and he probably wouldn't have time to see us. My tenacity trait kicked in, and I said we would wait. A New York minute later, he burst through the door, hand extended. "So good to see you, Verne." Meeting in his office, he asked if there was anything we wanted to do. Nothing particular. He said he would send some tickets over to my cousin's apartment. That afternoon, the courier knocked on the door with a large envelope. That night, we were sitting in the 5th row orchestra seats at the Winter Garden. You may know it as the home of Stephen Colbert's late night show. The musical was a smash hit for a young new talent. The curtain opened, and there she was, Barbra Streisand, singing the lead role in Funny Girl. It was the hottest show on Broadway. I thought, she's only 21 and I'm only 21. The next night, we had tickets to the Johnny Carson show, but Johnny wasn't there. But the fill-in was one of America's great treasures, Groucho Marx. Some of his jokes got bleeped when he broke the rules of what you could say on television. I liked his irreverent attitude. The next day, we went to the New York World's Fair. The giant stainless steel globe landmark still sits there in the middle of a park in Brooklyn in view of Shea Stadium. I've since visited the barren site and remember the good times and the things we saw. Walt Disney was involved in the design of the event that was to show the world what was to come, a prologue to our future. The GE exhibit featured a futuristic home with a room that had a large video screen covering a wall. A home theater, they called it. I thought that might be possible. We used diverse video phones, rode the monorails, and saw life-size rocket ships that would take us to the moon. And how could you miss the new Mustang at the Ford exhibit? In all, there were exhibits from 58 countries, like seeing the whole world all in one place. I wanted to see those places. These are the sites that influenced my generation to try and do great things. It was a memorable weekend in New York and a long life love for places like that. I had no idea that a dozen years later I would have an office and showroom on the 66th floor of the Empire State Building. Holoubek Studios were listed on the directory marquee by the Bank of Art Deco elevators. Whenever I walk past that building, I reminisce being there the night the third remake of King Kong was being filmed. This time the ape was climbing the tower of the New York World Trade Center. There was a call for extras, but we were too busy working late making deals. This was only one of the many adventures I experienced while traveling both coasts and Canada for 5 summers, selling hand-painted t-shirts that no one had seen before. The second summer on the road, I could not keep up with orders for custom art, so a production method was devised. My partner Carl was an art student and learned about silkscreen printing. So we began screen printing the outlines on the blank shirts, coloring them in with an airbrush. It still took too long. You had to change a bottle for each new color. For the next summer, I invented a new airbrush that would solve this problem of supply and demand. Working with the local machine shop here in Lincoln, I drew a sketch inspired by the high school trumpet I once tried to play. The solid cylinder of aluminum fit perfectly in the palm of my hand, and it was attached to a high-volume touch-up spray gun like those used in auto body shops, with a configuration of holes, valves, and a mixing chamber with tubes running to bottles of three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, so that by pressing one or a combination of the buttons, I could spray the entire spectrum of color. I could do a shirt in a few minutes because I didn't have to stop and change bottles. The invention was never patented, and the multicolor airbrush got lost along the way. The key to increased sales was making the shirts faster or making the shirts more valuable. I was quick at lettering, and I would add a name on a shirt for another $1. Phrases cost more. It was personalization that increased the price we could charge. It was now a value-added product. Taking a note from Einstein that imagine is more important than knowledge, I was full of ideas, figuring out the best way to achieve an end result. Name any organization and you have a base business. And let me discover how I found that market. We were working at the Wisconsin State Fair in Milwaukee when I painted an old-style label on a shirt for the owner of a beer garden across the way. We often traded shirts for food on the grounds. So when he wanted more shirts for his staff, we made a deal to trade shirts for beer and brats. I was walking across that large grassy mall from the old-style beer garden on the way back to my booth when a young kid handed me a stack of STP stickers, a new and popular oil additive back in the day. He was tired of his job, handing out the little stickers one at a time, as many people didn't want one. If I would take them off his hands, he would appreciate it. I put the pile of STP stickers on the counter of my booth, along with a little sign that said stickers, 25 cents each. They sold out quickly. So I started painting the logo on a few shirts, and they began to sell. I made more of the old style shirts, and they began to sell too. I discovered branding. I discovered that people would pay for the privilege of advertising a product. I discovered when a customer added these images to their personal identity, they would become a customer for life. This was the beginning of the corporate printed apparel business. Not art, recognizable logos with messages. This was an observation that turned into an industry. No research, no test market, no focus group, just plain putting two and two together. I bought out the company and its inventory from my partner Carl when he graduated and went off to London with his wife to study retail merchandising. Terry and I were married. And she became my life partner. Finding the right mate is critical to your success, and I was lucky in my choice. I continued to tour each summer, but this was not the future of the business. The little company needed a physical location. So I set up a storefront at a shop at 1311 South 11th Street with 1,200 square feet of production and office space. Then I hung a small sign above the glass door that read Holoubek Studios. J-School classmate Dan Nelson and fraternity brother Ron Snyder joined the company. We set up a student sales force with reps in each house and dorm. The orders poured in from their sales work, and before long we were doing the majority of Greek garments and party favors on the campus. My income became larger than the starting salary at IBM, and I had a year of college to complete. Plastisol, a PVC or polyvinyl chloride, is a coating you have on your dishwasher basket and on the handle of tools. Plastisol became the standard flexible ink we used to print directly on the fabric. But then I found a new way to use Plastisol. One night in the little shop on South 11th Street, I worked alone on an idea. That night I created my version of a heat transfer for textiles. Applying the scientific method, calculating various times and temperatures, I figured out how to print and cure multiple colors of plastisol ink on a coated paper. The property of plastisol is that it remelts, and with proper curing, one could apply the printed art on paper to decorate fabric. A simple process that took place with heat to remelt the plastic and pressure to apply. Or in layman's term, you could apply the design to a t-shirt with a regular household iron. I rushed home with the first shirt. Terry washed it over and over. The image did not wash out. It was permanent. Ahead of the curve, we were in a new business before it was a business. Here's where the hours of math, chemistry, and physics classes became the key to an unpatented invention. It would be 5 long years before the iron-on heat transfer would gain acceptance, but when it did, it went viral. And so did Holoubek Studios. It didn't take long for companies like ours to start their own production, and soon we had a trade association, a trade magazine, and t-shirt trade shows. We would one day have 20,000 customers buying our iron-on designs to sell in t-shirt shops all over the world. The t-shirt market was estimated at $3 billion. We knew we were in the right business. I learned that competitors make the business larger, and makers become more creative. Monopolies lose their instinct and crumble when the young innovators challenge the status quo. Reaching that first level of success made it possible for us to travel and explore. It was time to see Europe. In 1976, Terry and I took our 2 oldest children on a tour of the continent. We began in Czechoslovakia when it was under Russian communist rule. A cousin there and his family welcomed us at a prearranged meeting space, smack dab in the middle of Prague's Old Town Square. There was no free press, just the state-owned newspapers. The radio in our hotel room only had 1 station. If we brought in a Time magazine or a shortwave radio, it would have been a crime. The authorities always knew where we were because our passports were collected at the end of each day and taken to the police station. Such was the oppression of a country isolated for 30 years. The wall around East Europe was called the Iron Curtain, and there was no free travel or trade across that border without government permission. I wondered, were they keeping us out or keeping the Czechs in? The planned economy could not match supply to demand. We witnessed bread lines, stores with empty shelves, but there was no protest in sight. More than 20 years would pass before that wall came down. Without a shot fired, the Czechs found political and economic freedom. The end would be trade, not war. On our last visit to Prague's Old Town, the Old Town Square was overrun by tourists and American brands were everywhere. We visited a cousin who was making parts for BMW in his small machine shop, and Microsoft set up camp in the newest democracy on earth. For that little nation, free trade meant peace and prosperity, and a place for us to sell t-shirts. 3 years after the first visit, we opened an office and warehouse in England. It was the beginning of the European Union, with free trade and no tariffs between countries, and we arrived to be part of it all. In the following 35 years, our small company would become internationally known, with offices in all major cities and a subsidiary, the Iron-On Express UK, located in London, England, with manufacturing set up in Denmark. Nothing lasts forever. The public's tastes were changing. The customer wanted a softer feel to the printed garment. The heavier plastic heat transfers in the shops that sold them were on the way out. We sold the UK company. Our company adapted and we developed new methods to print multiple colors directly on the fabric, like the garments you wear today. Then we did the unthinkable. We stopped producing iron-ons, the product that made the company famous. This is an example of how technology can quickly disrupt your business and an industry forever. The lesson of the STP stickers 25 years earlier put us in the corporate and licensed apparel business, with our own private label supplying printed shirts to the Fortune 500 companies. We bought license to make apparel for movies, rock stars, cartoon characters, for anything we thought the public would buy. Most only lasted a season or two. When our art and printing people figured out how to print bright colors on black fabric, we found the very best license of all. The final chapter was a license to make millions and millions of black shirts for the Harley-Davidson Motor Company and its worldwide network of dealers. We traveled to meet those dealers in every state, Europe, and Asia. We were global at last. My favorite order was when we shipped 10,000 shirts for the Harley-Davidson dealer in Prague, Czech Republic. I joined a motorcycle club, and in 2005 we sold the business to VF Corporation, makers of Wrangler jeans, North Face, JanSport, and Nautica. They were the largest textile company in the world. I received an excellent education from the University of Nebraska, but it didn't come easy. By some instinct, I was able to get off the path when I needed to, organizing my own major to suit what I wanted to do. I cannot give much advice to the entrepreneurs here tonight, except to bring you this message from another time, more than 50 years ago, when I was told I was too young to own a business. A leader's most important job is to hire the right people. So I must give most of the credit to the hundreds and hundreds of people who contributed their all to the company, and to the suppliers who gave us credit when we had none. There were ups and downs, problems and disasters, false starts and failures, but each one was met with tenacity, the will to never give up. In my final analysis of success, it's less about what you did and more about what you let others do. It's about being curious of alternatives. It's about being observant of your environment. And it's about being tenacious in your search for the truth. To those graduates still sorting it out, I can say from my personal experience, the University of Nebraska has everything needed to make your life successful. So explore those places off the path. And to those who are about to enter the upside-down world, I believe your instincts will take you where you want to go. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Are we going to do any questions?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, thank you.
All right, and now it sounds like Verne is willing to field some of your questions, so we can take some time for that now.
You mentioned that you stopped selling your what made you sort of known in the market. That was the environmentalist.
Mm-hmm.
What indicators, what information did you use to make that decision?
That's a good question, a really good question. I startled the company when we did it. I mean, it shook the place up. But I told the art department and advertising and salespeople, I said, bring out all the catalogs of all our competitors. And we laid them out on a table. I said, look, this stuff's all looking alike. There were 150 people making iron-ons. Now we were in the commodity business, and the prices went down. We couldn't make any money selling irons. Besides, the customers were not buying them. So we transitioned from the iron-on into another popular product we had. There was a lettering system. You could go into a t-shirt shop and put your name or a phrase with these little letters, and I had a patent on the system where you could put the letters together and the spacing would be perfect. That product line continued for probably 4 years, and we had one guy working on it. It was dropping about $400,000 to the bottom line every year, so we weren't going to let it all go, because we had these little shops still buying the lettering, and we kind of went to the sporting goods market. But we just got out of it, and we went after the t-shirt business, because that's what people were buying, and so we had to change stream. So I guess it was just instinct. I was just looking at I was observing my environment, and we had to change. You had a question?
So last night I got the opportunity to talk to you and your wife and hear a little bit about your personal life and your story and your children, and just get a little bit of an inside look on that. And my question is with all the success that you've had and all the things that you've done, how did you manage your time with your business, something that you cared about a lot and you lived, it was your life? How did you manage that, time with your family, time with your life partner, your wife Terry? How did you manage that?
Well, I don't know that I did it well, but we took our kids traveling. I mean, we went everywhere, just like my dad. My father would take people, or take the family on a vacation. I mean, very few of our neighbors went on a vacation, but when he was growing up during the Depression, he had to hop a freight train and go out west, pick sugar beets and potatoes and sugar cane, or I guess sugar beets, and he would send money home because there was really no money in that period of time. And so I learned from that to travel, but he took us traveling. When he did start getting going, he took us traveling, not every year, but you know, we went to Milwaukee and saw the Allis-Chalmers plant. We went to South Bend and we saw the Studebaker plant. He always took us to factories, and so I got to see how things were being made. And we were always educational trips. We went to Yellowstone Park. Anybody been to the Black Hills and you see the Crazy Horse? When we went there was a rock, and it kind of gave me a picture. This is what it's going to look like. Would you please give us some money? And there was, and I think the guy made his living on that. I don't think it's still finished, but managing time with your family is, we took time off when we had to. We also entered another business, which was merchandising apparel at a major music festival that draws about 1 million people. And our kids were all members of the little company, the second company. Terry ran it. And we'd do this festival in 10 days, and we'd blow out about 60,000 shirts at retail in 10 days. And we were the manufacturer, so we'd make them at night, and I'd call in what we were running out of, and we'd make them at night. In the morning, we'd have shirts at 10 o'clock when the festival, and that collected a lot of cash. I mean, it was cash money. So we took that money, we started investing in these sophisticated printing presses, and we set up a leasing company. So the kids were involved in all these things, so I guess we spent a lot of time with them back at the fairgrounds, so to speak. We also did the Wisconsin State Fair for a few years. And I guess managing time with family and a business, it's very difficult because at least I maybe put in too many hours, but I mean, I worked one time 30 days in a row, came back from London, commuted back and forth and trying to manage, and the things were, like I said, they were changing. We finally sold the company. But we lived on a farm. Terry found a 9-acre place with a Civil War house and an old barn. And it was Cream City brick. If you know what that is, it's a yellow brick, was popular in Wisconsin, but the people had painted it pink. And so we had it sandblasted, and the neighbors thanked us. You change your house back to the original brick. Well, then we added some acres here. It ended up about 40 acres, I think, altogether. And every year we planted a crop. And I used old equipment, old tractors, old stuff, and the kids got to see this work being done. Basically, my dad says, or my son said, he said, when you're having fun, you're working, because we were working. And I hope they did get the message, because they're all working very hard now. So we kept them close to our business. Many times I couldn't be there. Terry carried the buckets for the chickens, and she pulled a calf. I was in London, and we had 38 head of Simmental. We had a real farm, it was small. We had 38 head of Simmentals, and when you breed them to bigger animals, you have birthing problems. So I was in London, and Terry pulled a calf. She was a city girl, but she learned how to do that. And we've always had chickens. We still have chickens, just got the new ones a couple weeks ago. We used to do it with the little chicks and grow them, but this time we got smart. She found a place that sells you chickens ready to lay. So the day we got home from our vacation, we picked up the chickens, and a few days later we had fresh eggs again. So we didn't have to go buy eggs. And I think we bought eggs since 1972. And so the kids watched all this. I think it brought the family together, although I was gone a lot. I'll admit that. I was traveled, I mean, We did 23 trade shows one year. And that's always a weekend, so that's half the year, right? Half the year weekend. So I don't know if I managed it well or not, but that's what we did. Anybody else?
I'd kind of like to add on to the last question about time management. Kind of during your senior year here at university, how did you manage your time between expanding your business and maintaining, keeping good grades and keep learning at university, or by expanding your business?
Well, now it's confession time. I didn't do very well at that. I was involved in a theatrical group on campus called the Cosmic Club, and we would put on a fall event. It was Sterney stories, do a skit. It was a fall review. But in the spring, we put on a professional Broadway show. And it was done with the professional people. Dr. Hall, School of Journalism, was married to, his wife was Lou Hall. Her sister was Vivian Vance of I Love Lucy, if anybody remembers I Love Lucy. And so I was in this Cosmic Club, and first year you're a worker. Bob Carey was a worker too. He was always a real serious guy. And he became an innocent, good grades, and Medal of Honor and all that stuff. That wasn't me. That wasn't me. We partied a lot. Cosmic Club took a lot of hours, and I finally got enough bad grades that I said I couldn't come back. But if I would get B's for 9 hours in a semester, I could come back. Then I took a break for a year for military, went to Amarillo and did my basic training, and I was in the Air Force. I did the Air Guard for 6 years. And then I got back into college. I was not going to give up that degree. I was going to get that degree no matter what. And I got the B, and I got back, and I graduated finally. So, caution to the wise. Don't do what I did. It was, we were having so much fun, though. I mean, it was, and the business took time. Like I said, it was big income. I was working nights there and going to school, but that is a thing you got to think about, how you're going to manage that time and keep it all going. I was doing too many things at once, and I probably did that most of my life, too many things at once. I hope that answered your question.
You talked about your personal philosophy of financing your family, not taking out credit cards. Can you talk a little bit about your business finance philosophy?
Again?
You talked about how in your personal finance you guys didn't use debt as in credit
Right.
cards. Could you talk about maybe your business finance and how you approach that?
Well, I found out the bank's not your friend. You have to use the bank, don't let them use you. There was a point in time where they wanted to put us out of business because nobody believed in the t-shirt business. The minute things got downturn, they wanted to get rid of us. And we just built a new factory. So what I did is I went to another bank who wanted our business, and I didn't tell them the first bank was dropping us. So my strategy was, you want our business? I got an unsecured loan from a new bank called Associated Bank. They were just coming to Milwaukee, and I loved the place because we made the deal in folding chairs in a little office. They were just getting going. Associated Bank here, they're a pretty major bank in the Midwest. So we financed inventory, of course. We had like a $5 million line of credit. But like I said, that was presses we bought with cash, and we'd bootstrap. When that thing crashed and all the iron-ons were gone, we sold London, we were about 150 people. We got down to 15 people. Talk about a blue day. And we had to put it all back together, and we got it going. And we decided we're not going to use the bank for anything if we don't have to. We gave them a line of credit, and sometimes we never had to use it because the Harley-Davidson stuff was 50% margin. So, I mean, it was pretty lucrative. So I guess you're going to have a banker someplace along the way. But as far as personal debt, Terry and I just never went there because we couldn't. We wouldn't damage our credit for the business. We weren't going to end up with a bunch of credit card bills that we couldn't pay. And we lived frugally. right? We always bought used cars. Terry sewed clothes for the kids. You know, it was very old school. It may be impossible to do today, but if you're going to borrow money, just be really careful. You know, there's a saying that, you know, you borrow $1 million from a bank, you're in trouble. You borrow 20 million, they're in trouble. So keep tabs on your bank, and don't let them. They were always talking to me to borrow money. They want to throw money at us, and we just didn't do it if we didn't have to. Because you can put money in your company until you run out. You know, we bought used equipment, we fixed stuff. We just did it kind of like farming. You know, you're just not going to put yourself on the line where you're going to lose everything. You just have to be frugal in all the things you do. Efficiency, a lot of efficiency. Well, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this. I've had a great couple days here meeting all these students, listening to their ideas. Great teachers with Tom and Michelle. Have a tremendous career going for themselves here, because they're going to someday say, this is what we did. We trained all these entrepreneurs. And thank you, sir, for making this happen. I don't think it was in the dictionary. I don't think anybody knew the word when I was in school. They certainly couldn't spell it. In fact, I was writing this thing, I put the word entrepreneur, and I had it spelled right, and it says that word's not in the dictionary. So I've got to talk to these people who make these dictionaries. If they're not putting the word in the dictionary. Well, thank you very much again. I've kept you from your dessert too long, so let's go have some sugar.